Hey, thank you very much for coming to my workshop. For this evening, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to retire early, and I'll be sharing with everybody a stress-free strategy to get out of the corporate rat race. Okay, and before I begin, today's presentation is educational in nature, so where I make references to investment securities, they're not a buy or sell recommendation. All right, and Dr. Welf and myself are not liable for damages caused directly or indirectly by the material contained in these notes. All right, so with that out of the way, who am I? My name is Christopher Ng Chung. I have previously uh, attained degrees in engineering, finance, and law. I've spent 14 years in the IT industry, and I'm an author on 3 books on personal finance. And one of my books, Growing a Tree of Prosperity, was a Straits Times bestseller in 2005, and I've since appeared twice in the Me and My Money column on the Sunday Times. All right, and you're listening to me because I've gained financial independence at the age of 39. All right, and my goal for this evening is to explain in very simple terms how to retire early. All right, and my discussion today will be broken down. The first component will be broken down into 4 parts. All right, I'll be talking about our life in 4 seasons, looking at it from the lens of someone going through spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And then we will have a 5 minute break. And then after that, we will start to discuss about the early retirement masterclass for about 20 to 30 minutes before we begin to talk a little bit about Q&A. So if you look at the chat box and you have any questions to ask me, you can put up your questions on the chat box. And I should be able to get to Q&A between 8:45 and 9 p.m. All right, between 8:45 and 9 p.m. So um, your entire investment of your time would be about 1.5 hours for this evening. All right. Okay, so with that out of the way, um, let's begin with a discussion about our life. And I would say that it is quite appropriate to divide our life into 4 seasons or 4 parts, right? With spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And spring is the time where we spend most of our lives schooling and preparing for our career. All right. And early influences when it comes to personal finance is extremely important. So I'm just going to share a little bit about my own childhood. My dad uh, was a founding partner of probably one of the most ubiquitous pet shops that you find in Singapore today. And so I grew up in a retail environment, this place called Shaw Center. That's where I spent most of my growing up years. And I was intimately very familiar with the life of a retailer. And I understand that for a retailer, you need to be able to sell enough goods to make the rent, right? And occasionally, when my parents do not make enough money to pay the rent, right, they would fight, right? And so that has sort of influenced me very subtly on the way I look at investing. And you will see that this will repeat itself over and over again, right? Like why I like becoming a landlord and why I do not like actually paying rent to other people, right? And so all that would come in and would be very, very important as we get to the later part of our discussion, right? And of course, another thing that I've learned very early in my career is that we can't really trust financial advisors. So when I was about to go into national service, my mom got for me a insurance plan, and the insurance plan is supposed to pay for a certain number of years, and then after that, when I start work, the payments are supposed to stop, and then it should pay for itself moving forward. Unfortunately for me, uh, the letters for the premiums just kept coming every year at the end of the year in December. And eventually we had to bring our case to the company that sold us the insurance, right? Why were promises not made? Okay, and why do the requests for premiums just kept coming as if nothing has happened and the promises were not kept, right? And we were given basically 2 options, right? We could either allow our insurance policy to lapse, or we could continue paying for the premiums, but for an unknown period of time, right? So we've let the insurance premium lapse. We didn't get a single cent out of it, all right, at the time, all right? And this entire experience left a very bad taste in my mouth, right? So because of that, or maybe I was lucky, right? I learned about financial products very early in my career. So I was able to just say no whenever an old friend were to call me up and want to meet me. I will ask them whether they are financial advisors. And if they are, or if they're MLM people, I would tell them, no, I'm not interested in meeting up with you, right? So that sort of summed up my approach towards money as I was going through my spring. But for many of you listening to me today, all I want to say is that personal finance is not taught well in school, right? You're being taught to be an obedient employee, especially for my generation. Consequences of compound interest, not taught to secondary school students. No one really understands how crippling it is to pay sales expenses for these investment products. So because of this, the middle class in Singapore, basically every month, we're just paying additional money, additional expenses to the finance industry, right? And very often, in many cases, to our dismay, right? So some of the questions you want to ask yourself is, how do we pick up crucial personal finance skills in such a case, right? And one possible answer is, for folks in my generation, we think that reading popular books on personal finance would be able to ramp up our financial literacy within a short period of time. And a lot of people in my generation fell into the trap of reading this book called Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And that book has been very inspirational and very motivational. And I've read it in my final year of university, right? Yeah, but I enjoyed the book, but I realized that the book doesn't really tell me what to invest in. And so I read his second, his third book, and his fourth book, and all of them are the same, right? They don't talk very much about how to invest. It's only, I think, on the fifth or sixth book where I realized that actually Robert Kiyosaki is a creature of multi-level marketing, right? He has published a book called The Business of the 21st Century. And in that particular book, he tries to reprogram the people who read it to become more open-minded, right? When they get invited to some kind of network marketing seminar, right? Which is terrible, right? And this has plagued a lot of people in my generation. I think it doesn't affect millennials as much, and I don't think Gen Z would be open to the idea of MLM. But MLM is terrible, right? They get you to buy these products that are not competitive in the markets, and then they expect you to then shove these products down the throats of the people in your downline or the friends that you will drag into the network, right? There's a lot of focus on business building, almost zero focus on how good the product is, right? So I think that was something that there's still a lot of people, right, that was emotionally damaged, right, by getting into an MLM program in their youth. Okay, yeah, and the bad news doesn't just stop at books like Robert Kiyosaki, right? It goes even further. Now, if you study finance formally in a diploma or degree program, you realize that the financial models don't really show you how to invest as well, right? And what I have here is the discounted cash flow formula. This is something that they teach in most diploma and degree programs. And so if you want to value an asset, you have to project your cash flow into the future, right? So that's very hard because imagine you're the CEO of SIA, you want to foresee whether there's a pandemic 2 or 3 years down the road. That's very difficult, right? So this is just an estimate. On top of it, you need to discount these cash flows to the present, and so you need a discount rate. And the discount rate is also very subjective, right? Are you going to use inflation rate, weighted average cost of capital, Singapore savings bonds rate? What is your discount rate, right? And so when different analysts have different projections and they apply different rates, right, you end up with a different fair value for the company. And that hurts a lot of retail investors who have to read through these investment reports, right, from various financial analysts, right? So that doesn't help either, right? So the tip that I have for you in spring, since this is the first season that we'll be discussing, is to invest the right time to pick up finance the right way. And if you want to get a book and get started on personal finance, the best book is The Richest Man in Babylon by Josh Clayson. The book is over 100 years old, but it has timeless pieces of wisdom, can be read in about, I think, one bus trip of about 45 minutes. You can finish reading it. Okay. So it's a very, very good book to start with, and you can find it in Kinokuniya or the local libraries. Now, if you want to pick up some additional skills on top of it, and you want to pick up some concepts, then you can look at the Conceptual Foundations of Investing by the Cordells, and I think that's sold at Kinokuniya as well, right? So with these two books, you would be able to learn finance the right way, okay? And it can get you started rather than reading some books, right, that actually are not really designed for the purposes of actually helping you with your financial literacy, all right? And so to summarize, Spring, it's about the importance of picking up some skills in personal finance as a life skill, and a lot of how successful we are throughout our life depends on how well we've built that foundation for ourselves when it comes to financial education. All right. And so that concludes our discussion in Spring. The next thing that I want to talk about is the season of summer. And in this particular season, this is the time in your life where you spend most of your time making money and you also start a family at this stage, right? So most of you who are listening to me would be going through summer right now. Okay. And for me, in summer, I worked in IT outsourcing. And that's largely because um, when I came out to work in IT, there was the dot-com crash, right? And then the outsourcing wave began. Companies began to sell off their MIS departments to an outsourcing company, right? So for me, I wasn't very eager to lose my job, to maybe a cheaper engineer from somewhere else, right? I decided to join the outsourcing industry, and I became a specialist at moving work out of the country, right? So I would document the work in Singapore and then move it to KL and train a team of engineers to take over the work in Singapore. And then the engineers in Singapore will be redeployed, retrenched, all right? And then after that, I would do the same to the engineers in Kuala Lumpur by flying off to Bangalore and then training a team there. And I did relatively well, right? Traveling across different parts of the world, all right? And moving IT departments elsewhere. Okay, until one day when I was in Bangalore, I received an email. And the email said that one of my colleagues in Europe, his contract was not renewed. And 2 weeks later, he committed suicide, right? Because his work moved from Belgium to Costa Rica, right? So then I realized that the work we do in IT outsourcing can result in the loss of lives, right? And it's something that you have to live with. If the person who loses his job, um, commits suicide or has mental wellness issues, right? There's really blood on your hands, right? And because of that, I was sort of disturbed, right? And I started to find some sort of an antidote, right, to the poison of outsourcing, right? And I then spent about 3 years of my life in the evenings studying for the CFA and trying to find a solution, right? If you are an IT professional, you're computer science or an engineer, uh, your career is not going to be particularly long if you don't have a habit of picking up new technologies and skills, right? And one way to prevent that from happening is to understand a little bit of finance, because finance simply doesn't have the kind of half-life that the technology professions have. In other words, if you pick up some financial skills, the knowledge is going to last you slightly longer, right? Slightly longer than maybe engineering skills, right? And obviously to find a way to see whether is it possible to build an investment portfolio to ultimately replace your job, right? And I was getting nowhere because financial models are quite difficult to use and subjective, as I've explained to you earlier. And it wasn't until I found a paper, right, in the Financial Analyst Journal. And the title of this paper is Surprise, Higher Dividends Equal Higher Earnings Growth. And in this paper, it says that there is historical evidence that strongly suggests that expected future earnings growth is the fastest when current payout ratios are high and slowest when payout ratios are low, right? Now, essentially what it's trying to say is that companies that are generous, giving dividends back to the shareholder, they are run by managers who are more down to earth. So they don't do this thing called empire building. Okay, and these managers generally, they are down to earth people, and they don't install artwork in their head offices. They don't install golden taps in their toilets. They build the company up from a very strong foundation. And you find that these companies eventually grow under their management and their care, right? And that's very important insight, right? Because when it comes to investing, you want to know something that other people do not know, right? And then you try to act on it, right? You try to apply what you learn and you apply it into the markets. And that's exactly what I did. I liquidated the unit trust that I have in my portfolio at that time. And in those days, there are no exchange traded funds. unit trusts are very expensive instruments, very, very high sales fees. You're almost putting your money into an investment, and the fund manager basically pockets the dividends that you earn, right? So instead of owning these unit trusts, I began to move my money into Singapore blue chips to be able to get the cash directly. One of the investments I made was SPH, right? Many years ago, it isn't such a bad company. It's not even traded today. Okay, but many years ago, SPH was yielding 6% dividends, and it was able to pay me for 1,000 shares at that time, $150 every year, 4 days before my birthday, right? And that instantly allowed me to rewrite the script for my life, right? So I could really reframe my life from someone who needed to work, right, into someone that now has a purpose behind working in the office, right? So I have a graph like this, right? And you can imagine that my expenses is a horizontal line here. As a bachelor, expenses is about $1,100 a month. And over time, I can build an investment portfolio. The dividends would be very low, but over time, it would eventually go up exponentially, right? And when the dividends began to exceed your basic living expenses, then you've reached some kind of financial independence for yourselves. For me, it wasn't financial independence to retire at that time. The idea was to become financially independent such that I didn't need my salary anymore, and I can farm 100% of my salary into the stock market to make my wealth go up even faster, right? And I was able to attain that at the age of 32, which is a fairly early milestone in my life compared to many of my peers, right? And so I was able to actually rapidly ramp up my portfolio size once I was able to reach financial independence, okay? And so now we come back and we talk about your summer, right? The folks listening in, right? You find that your work is not as engaging as before. During the pandemic, there was the Great Resignation in the US, and China has started a lie flat movement that I think has continued to this day, right? And on top of it, there is this emphasis on work-life balance, and a lot of workers are rebelling against the managers who ask them to go back to the office, right? If you go back to the office, then basically you'll be at the same stage as what I was in my 20s. You have to travel every day, and that will waste about 2 to 3 hours at a time. And if you have to work overtime, right, in your office, that would be very unsustainable, right, for people with families, right? So a lot of people would then ask themselves this question, right? Is there a way to get a more relaxed lifestyle instead of just slaving, so that your boss can get a Ferrari, right? Yeah. And on top of it, because you're going through summer at the same time, financial institutions want to control over your investment strategy. All right. They have trained a very motivated pool of supporters who make commission from sales, right? You can call them financial advisors, you can call them relationship managers, but fundamentally, these people are salespeople, and they're trying to pull a fast one. They want to sell you something, but there's a very strong conflict of interest between them and you, right? But obviously, this is not something that people would tell you in their advertising materials, right? So that's a serious problem for people going through summer right now. And then there is also the problem of skills depreciation. You find that the half-life of your knowledge, the engineering courses that you've attended, computer science, they tend to degrade very quickly because new technologies arrive, right? Like now, it is possible to use ChatGPT to write some small amounts of code, right? And I know some engineers who actually use ChatGPT to assist them in debugging, right? So over time, you find that your career is not as long as my career because I came from a different generation, right? But the mortgages that you promise to pay the bank, right, remain the same, 25 to 30 years. Okay, so you don't have a lot of time to earn your keep in this modern economy. So you earn the most money at this period of time, you're at the peak of your energy, but you spend too much time indulging in your lives, right? And then you end up paying the price later on. I think that is the fundamental lesson of summer. Summer is always a very good time because you're making money, right? But if you indulge yourself too much, right, you'll pay a price later on. Okay? Okay, so in summer, I'm going to address the myth, all right? And one idea that the industry likes to spread is that retirement is impossible unless you listen to some kind of advisor, right? Now, before I go on, I need to explain to you some of the things you might need to understand about retirement and early retirement so that you'll be able to do some planning on your own. All right. Yeah, regardless of whether you attend my course or not. All right. So, one of the first things you need to understand about retirement is that for a single person at age 25, you need $1,768 a month to live a dignified life, right? And so what we do is we take this 1,768 and we then multiply it by 12 to get how much you need every year. And then we divide it by 4% or 0.04. Now, why 4%? Because there's a belief in the industry that for every $1 million that you have in the stock market, you can spend about $40,000 today and adjust it by inflation every year subsequently. And you wouldn't run out of money for the next 35 or 40 years. All right. They call this the safe rate of withdrawal, 4%. So once we take this annual expenses and we divide by 4%, we have this number, which is about $530,000, right? And that is precisely the amount of stocks and shares and investments that you need in the markets to be able to say that, I'm ready for retirement. Okay. So it's all derived from the research in the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy in 2021. But as far as you're concerned, you need about $500,000 to retire if you're a single person, right? So that's generally the rule of thumb that the folks listening in you have to understand. So for married couple, you need $1 million, right? Okay. Now, the second assumption is that you don't have much time to be able to plan for your retirement. Okay. So imagine if you are a guy, you've done NS and you've done a 4-year degree, you start at the age of 25, right? If you start your job and you job hop a little bit, you get yourself an advanced degree, right? Often to change careers, right? Sometimes maybe programming is not right for you. You want to become an accountant, you do a master's in professional accounting. Some of you become lawyers, like I'm a mid-career lawyer myself, right? You go for a Juris Doctor qualification. That will take up time. And then if you look at the people who are getting retrenched, the people who are getting retrenched in the tech sector in China, when they're 35 years old, people deem them worthless. Okay, sorry, there was an internet connection break just now. All right. Okay, so at the age of 40, you might get retrenched. And so it becomes this very turbulent period in your life. The government will tell you to reskill, right? Reskill and then get re-employed, right? I call this the 3 Rs. Get retrenched, reskill, and then get re-employed, right? And I have peers now in their 50s, never really have taken any advanced degree or they've improved themselves, suddenly getting retrenched in their late 40s, and then rushing to pick up some of these very, very basic WSQ level kind of courses. And the problem, with these courses, right, is that they are not heavy enough to make you employable after that. I think that's something which I think our government is not very good at addressing that problem, right? Like my friend attended no code programming courses. So what's the point, when you can program without any code, right? Because then I can hire anybody to do that. I wouldn't hire a 50-year-old, right? So I think that's a fundamental problem that I think we're all facing right now, and it will come to head maybe in a few years' time where people realize, okay, the government hasn't realized yet that the people who are attending these reskilling courses are not getting re-employed, right? Okay, yeah, so you heard it from me first. Okay, it's politically incorrect. All right, I apologize. So if you line everything up on a timeline, you find that at the age of 30, at the age of 40, your career is relatively peaceful for you to begin to accumulate your retirement funds. Okay, and so I think that is the thing that you want to work with, right? Give yourself a decade to build up a retirement portfolio and see whether it works. So that's the second assumption that you have, right? Of course, some people might feel discouraged. You see, Chris, I'm already in my 40s. I'm attending your workshop, right? Is there enough time for me to plan for retirement? I say there is. It just means that if you hit the age of 40, nobody's going to actively try to retrench you on your 40th birthday. You can continue to work for a few years, right? And so long as there is enough time for a decade to build up your retirement portfolio, everything is fine, right? And I also have students who are in their 50s and 60s who already have some capital, and they can then invest that for a little bit of passive income. All right. The final assumption is if you look at the median income of a Singaporean, which is about 4,005 4 years ago, and if you adjust it by inflation, right, you can say that after deducting CPF, I can invest 50% of my take-home pay, right? 50% of my take-home pay, and I'm able to aggressively save for retirement. All right. So that's the third assumption that you have, right? So when you combine all three assumptions together, you will know whether whatever is being sold by the insurance agent or the retail banker, whether these investment products can allow you to meet your retirement goals, right? It's very mathematical, very, very objective. All right, so let's look at insurance products. Okay, now, how it works is that when I perform the calculation, I use a compound interest calculator and it is transparent to you, all right? And we start with $2,000 a month of savings, as I've stated earlier. And the interest rate is what the product promises you. So in this example, I have a very short-term endowment that gives 2%, right? And what I do is I keep increasing the number of years until the future value exceeds 500,000, right? And so at around 18 years, it will reach 500,000. So I can say that using these low-yielding endowments, I can retire from the workforce in 18 years. So that's clearly not enough, all right? And that summarizes the short-term endowment problem that we have. Can't retire on that, okay? Now, the next thing that you want to look at is that most insurance agents will then say, you know, why don't you pick up something better, right? So they have a long-term endowment that they are able to promise up to 4.25% yield, right? And they can't promise more than that. It's illegal, I think, right? And the time required when you go through the same exercise is then 15 years, all right? Yeah, and that's not enough for you to meet your 10-year deadline. And then they will go further than that. They will push themselves to sell you investment-linked policies. And these investment-linked policies can be very toxic, contains a lot of management expenses and commissions, right? So I've generously given them a 5% yield for a global equity fund, right? After deducting all the expenses. And that's a very generous assumption, by the way, right? You can consult people in the industry for that. At 5% yield, then we're talking about 14 years to actually get out of the rat race, right? So generally speaking, nothing that your insurance agent or financial advisor can sell to you would allow you to meet your retirement goal within 10 years. Okay? All right. Now that's not all, right? We can move on to banking products and we can also look at unit trusts. So I've given a more generous kind of assumption that if you buy a unit trust for global equity fund, you can get about 6.5% every year, right? And even then, at 6.5%, you're talking about 13 years to meet the deadline, right? And do note that our retail funds remain stubbornly high when it comes to expenses, right? And this is largely due to this thing called a trailer fee, which are kicked back as sales commissions, all right? And so it's a very, very bad kind of place for us to buy these investment products, right, for financial institutions, right? Okay. So what am I driving at, right? The whole point is that you will fail, right? You will fail if you surrender your financial destiny to somebody else, right? You will not be able to meet your retirement goal. And the reason why this is the case is because of that conflict of interest, right? You want to save your money to retire early. The salesman wants to earn your money to retire early as well. So it's very difficult to reconcile the conflict of interest between a financial advisor as well as the client, right? So who really wins when they sell a product to you, right? Okay, so I'm not going to just spend the whole evening criticizing an industry without talking about what alternatives there are. So I'm going to talk a little bit about DIY investing. And in order to just talk a little bit about some of the not so good sales practices, right, I want to emphasize that stock returns is only part of the picture of what we are trying to do when we invest in the stock markets, right? As it turns out, you need to be concerned about two things: what returns you're getting and what kind of risk that you're putting your money in, right? So if your returns are very high, okay, but your risk is also very high, you find that on a particular year, you might have returns that are very, very volatile, right? But if you have a very stable return at the same very stable risk, you find that your risk is very low, right? So how does that affect retirement portfolios, right? And to illustrate that, all right, I'm just going to show you guys a program that I wrote, all right? So that you can understand what I'm actually driving at. Okay. Whoops. All right. All right. So this is a Python program I wrote to illustrate to students about the importance of managing the risk of a portfolio. All right. Give it a while. It needs to load up. All right. Okay. And you find that I have a very unique set of skills. I can code. So because of this, we are able to do a lot of things that a lot of conventional instructors are unable to do. Okay. So what I've done is that I've simulated 500 retirement portfolios, and every retirement portfolio has a probability of failure, right? In this case, 9%. Okay. Let's see what happens when we increase the underlying returns. Okay. So if we were to increase the underlying returns, you find that from 9%, the returns, then the failure rate goes down, right? Obviously, it goes down because we've increased the returns. Okay. Now let's see what happens if we keep the returns consistent and we increase the underlying risk of the portfolio, right? And if you do that, you will find that the returns actually go up. All right, sorry, the risk and the failure rate actually goes up further. All right, 16.6%, right? So what I'm trying to say is that given a portfolio with a very consistent return, but a very high risk, even if your return is the same, it can affect the probability of retiring, all right? Because there is a much bigger chance of your portfolio crashing in a particular series of years, right? Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about why I love Singapore stocks, right? Okay, so right now, the latest news is that the Federal Reserve has slashed interest rates by 0.5 point, and it's a very aggressive start to its first easing campaign in 4 years. So times have changed, right? Interest rates used to be high. It is now 50 basis points lower, and it's likely to be lower again in November. All right, and this favors value stocks. It favors dividend counters, which Singapore stock market is part of that market that actually has stocks that are very cheap, right? On top of it, we have no capital gains or dividends taxes. And we also don't have problems with estate planning. If anything were to happen to you, we don't have inheritance taxes in Singapore, right? And it is a value-driven high dividends kind of market, right? So even if you make a mistake in the Singapore market and the price of the stocks drop, right, the dividends keep coming, and you can expect to earn more money because you can use your salary to do bargain hunting, which is why in my program, I focus on Singapore stocks, although we do teach overseas markets, but the framework is applicable to any market, including Hong Kong and the US. Singapore stocks is where we do a lot of teaching because you can learn a lot about talking about Singapore. And of course, I have created this slide just for this evening because I just recently got whiplashed by some of my China investments. Because one of the algorithms I wrote detected a very strong trend in the China technology counters. On the 1st of October, I put in $600 and it went up by 25%. So I was very happy. But tonight, it has started to turn negative, right? So extremely hard to trade in a market like China that actually doesn't believe in capitalism. They're socialist kind of society. They may not believe in private property, right? And so I think a lot of people that invest in China are getting burned at the moment, right? And there's not much of a solution for that because I got burned as well, okay? But of course, the amount that I put into experiment is of course very small, okay? But other people might not be so lucky. So let's begin with a discussion of some of the rookie strategies that we have, right? So one rookie strategy is I buy the Straits Times Index Exchange Traded Fund, right? So this is just one exchange traded fund. I can buy it. The code is ES3, and I get exposure to the Straits Times Index that you can see every day on the newspapers and reported in the news. You own all the three biggest banks in Singapore, 7 real estate investment trusts, SIA, Singtel, all the major blue chips in Singapore, all in one. All right, just buy the basket. Okay, so that's one rookie strategy. Now let's see what happens if you do this for the past 16 years. So for the past 16 years, ending January this year, your returns are not particularly good, right? You have a return of 0.6%, okay, and your risk is about 12%. It's not that high, right? And you find that for a return of 0.6%, you need 20 years to get out of the rat race, right? And so that's not impressive at all. And you're often better off by listening to your financial advisor, right? Yeah, but someone in the know knows that there is a problem with this ETF because this ETF is structured in a way that is very different from how people normally buy stocks. It is capitalization weighted, which means that the larger the stock in the index, the more money is allocated into the index. So you find that in Singapore, there is a very special case where 45% of your capital is locked up in banks, right? So when banks do well, the STI do well. When banks do badly, the STI do badly, right? And this hasn't gone very smoothly for the past 16 years because interest rates were low, right? Interest rates were low. And so you can improve your performance slightly by buying each share in equal weights or equal value. So if you have $300,000, you can then go to the Business Times and you flip to the table that looks a little bit like this, and you put $10,000 into each of these local stocks, right? If you do this, right, you buy each share in equal weights, right, then you are able to get a slightly higher return, right? $300,000, $10,000 each, because there are 30 stocks in the Straits Times Index, right? If you do this, your performance improves to 4.5% and your volatility is about 10.2%, right? Okay. And if you take 4.5%, then not too bad, all right? It takes 15 years for you to get out of the rat race, okay? That's not good enough for a lot of people, okay? Now, what can we do to improve our performance further? Okay, you can then say that, well, instead of buying 30 counters, maybe I shortlist 15 counters with a superior characteristic, right? They call them factors, but factors are basically traits, right? When you pick a life partner, you are doing factor selection. The factor selection being women like tall guys, so height is a factor, right? So height is a factor. When we look at various stocks, we do the same thing, right? We look for dividend yields, we look for things like a lower price to earnings ratio. And so one sample strategy is what happens if we buy 15 stocks that give you a high dividend. And how do you do this? You turn to the newspaper, you use a marker, and you mark out 15 stocks that give the highest dividends, right? And then you divide your money into 15 parts, you buy them, and then 1 year later, you do the same exercise again, you sell everything, and you buy 15 stocks with the highest dividends. You just do that every year for the past 10 years, all right? So for the past 16 years, our results are even better, right? It goes up to 5.4%. Okay, the volatility is about the same as the STI ETF. And you reduce your retirement from a 20-year retirement to a 14-year retirement. And this is very interesting because January 2024 is a bad time for dividends investing. So this is when the strategy is doing badly. And now dividends investing has become good again. You find that actually the returns are much higher, right? Okay, so it's become 14 years for you to retire, right? And you might ask yourself, well, what if I now look for something with multiple traits, right? So when you're looking for a life partner, maybe for some men, right, you want to look for men that are tall, they have a symmetrical appearance, and they have a stable career, for example, right? So dating is multiple factors. So we do the same thing for dividend stocks. We say, well, high dividends is good, but we also want a high net profit margin, a high price to book ratio, right? Suppose you do this, right? Multi-factor models, right? And in this example, we are shortlisting 8 stocks with the highest dividend yields, lowest price to earnings ratio, lowest price to book ratio, and high profit margins, right? Computers have a way of combining these factors together, right? We use software to do that. You cannot use it by hand anymore. And if you're willing to do this, then your return becomes double digit for the past 16 years, right? And 10.2%, right? Slightly higher volatility because you're only buying 8 stocks, right? And now your retirement plan is not too bad, right? 11.1 years. Okay. And of course, some people say, yeah, but I still want a retirement plan that I can meet within a decade, right? And so what do? Right? We supercharge it, right? We apply leverage. Okay, so assuming the 8 stocks, and the 8 stocks are always very stable blue chip counters like what we have on the screen, right? Thai Beverage, Ascendas, very boring, very reliable kind of blue chip stocks, right? And because they're so boring and they're so reliable, brokers will allow you to borrow money on a portfolio of these stocks using these stocks as collateral. And the interest rate they charge, well, currently is a little bit on the high side, but expected to drop over the next 1 year. So the borrowing cost is 5%. You know, you can probably get a good margin account at 4.8%, right? Our return can still go up from 10.2 to about 15.5. And if you do this, you will meet your 10-year timeline, right? With a return of about 15%, right? Obviously, this will be quite a rough ride, okay, because the downside risk is now 27%, right? But if you're willing to take on a little bit more risk by applying leverage into your portfolio, and this is not a bad time to apply leverage, all right? Because in the past, interest rates were high, but right now interest rates are going down. So if you apply a leverage kind of portfolio, you're likely to benefit from outperformance, all right? Okay, so in summary, for summer, retirement is possible, but you need to be willing to level up your investment knowledge, right? Remember that I've demonstrated, right? We started out with a rookie strategy, okay, and that will earn you 0.6%. But if you understand the structural weakness of the ETF, you can increase your returns to 4.5% immediately, right? And then if you were to pick stocks that give you a high dividend, it goes up even further, right? And if you use these multi-factor evaluation models, you can get a double-digit return even in a boring market like Singapore, right? And finally, once you are confident about building a good portfolio, for the people who have a stomach for higher risk, we can apply leverage to get double-digit returns, right? Allowing you to meet your retirement goal. And do note that all these portfolios pay you a decent dividend along the way. So you actually get paid to be patient with your money, right? So that summarizes our summer. And summer is about how you can apply the knowledge that you've gained to get an edge in the markets, right? To do slightly better than other people who are investing and to be able to patiently build up your capital over time, right? Okay, so now it is time to look a little bit into autumn. And autumn is that period in your life where it begins to slow down. And for a lot of people, it is a very unhappy period in your life, right? And now that I'm heading into my 50s at the end of the year, I find that a lot of my peers are going through sort of like a depressive kind of stage in their life. But for me, I was unfortunate because I started to make my really bad career mistake at the age of 39. It's over 10 years ago now. And the mistake was thinking that when my daughter was born, I could jump to the public sector to get more work-life balance. And as it turns out, right, not only am I working in a toxic workplace, it is also extremely elitist, right? That doesn't really take the views of their mid-career people when making decisions, right? So I had a really nasty argument about the merits of a programming language to the senior director, and he was challenging me about the whether a language can like make a difference for the economy. And I was arguing with him that at the time, this language called Ruby on Rails would be very helpful because I could build a website with a database, you know, a functional business logic using one line or prompt, right? And he didn't believe that that was the case. So we kept debating each other on the technical merits, but I was the technical guy, right? And when he was losing the argument, he called a high-flying scholar into the room. And this high-flying scholar is in his 20s, data scientist from Cornell. And he asked the guy who's right. So that was very unfair because I'm a mid-career guy, you know, I'm not even an assistant director, I'm just a senior manager. And you're asking a scholar to basically throw me under the bus, right? Yeah, but unfortunately for him, the scholar is as technical as I am, and he said, yeah, I can program in a language, and Chris is absolutely right. You know, and the director, right, you would expect him to actually pick a fight with the scholar, but he wouldn't, because scholars are worshipped in the statutory board. And he agreed with the scholar, and he actually willingly conceded the argument to me. And I was very angry because I felt that my 14 years of working experience didn't matter squat to the organization. And I knew that, there's something wrong. I need to get out, right? I'm in the wrong job or career, right? They don't truly respect their mid-career people. Okay. And so within a very short period of time, I started to get into serious trouble in the company, right? I was called up into the room, and the lady supervisor, who's insane, started yelling at me at the top of her voice, and I didn't even know what I did wrong, right? So upon further inquiry, she was yelling at me because she felt that I initiated a project without her approval, right? And I told her that, look, the customer is rushing me to start work, and I needed the documentation to actually do the work, right? And without the existence of a project initiation form that most PMO organizations, right, they would have, right? I would have no choice. I have to like just get the customer to agree on a timeline and execute, right? So I asked her for help. I say, you find me the form, I'll fill out the form, and we'll do it formally, right? So instead of helping me like what an adult should, right, she started yelling at me even harder. And so I finally lost it, and at the time, right, I was so angry. I said, look, you can't help me find a form. You just want to yell at me. Fuck this shit, I resigned, right? And so that was how my career ended, right, 11 years ago. Okay, and it was finally time to fire your boss. Okay, but I need to explain to you how this works, all right? Now, this is the graph, all right? This is my family expenses. I have a wife and a daughter by then. This is my dividends. This is the salary I take home, right? The dividends I have is somewhere here. It is slightly higher than the salary that I take home, right? So actually, I do have the ability to fire my boss, right? I've been holding back for the past 7 years because I have not worked for a toxic workplace. I was relatively successful in the private sector, getting within the top 25% of most of my performance appraisals, right? It is only within this statutory board, all right, where in the first year everybody gets a C, and so even if you're arrowed and you do a lot of things, people will not give you a rating that you deserve, right? Yeah, and that was the end of my career. From that day onwards, I never had a conventional career where I drew a monthly salary. Okay. And so of course at that time, 39 years old, without a job, I can feed my family, but I was unhappy with myself, right? Because without a job, what happens to your personal identity? What do you say when people ask you the question, so what do you do? Right? So I did something very unconventional. I said, look, if I have a chance to reinvent myself, I'll go back to school, because I was the happiest in my life when I was in NUS, when I was 25 years old, right? And so I went back to study law in SMU. I wrote an application to SMU. I asked to join the Juris Doctor program. Then I spent 3 years studying with people half my age, and I got admitted to the bar in 2018, right? So it's been 6 years since I was admitted to the bar, right? And here's the thing, why am I talking to you and selling investment courses, right? Am I not doing anything in my law degree? Well, the truth is that I do use my law degree as an adjunct lecturer in a tertiary institution, right? So I do teach law in a polytechnic, all right, for fun, okay? But one of the reasons why I'm not in legal practice, as in going to court, was because a lot of people in middle age fail in their career transitions. Like for me, I was doing my pupillage in a law firm. I absolutely hated divorce law, right? I absolutely hated it, right? I'm proficient with dealing with servers. I'm not proficient with dealing with warring couples, unhappiness, going through credit card statements to find out whether the wife is buying a branded handbag, and people crying, and I'm just sitting there recording meeting minutes, right? So eventually, 6 months into my pupillage, I managed to complete it, but I never began negotiations, right, to become an actual associate. So I literally ran on the last day of my workplace, right? So that's a lesson, right, that I think a lot of senior people would want to learn, right? Not everything works, if you wait until your 40s and 50s and you try to reskill, right? Because the kind of companies you get might not be that good, right? Okay, coming back to what I picked up in school, I was lucky because in SMU, they had many Bloomberg terminals waiting in the room and nobody knows how to use them. So I trained myself how to use them to do quantitative back testing. I've developed a superior method to invest. I use leverage, right? I use my brokerage account. I was making enough dividends to support my family, but I needed a boost in my dividends to pay my school fees, right? And of course, at the same time, I was getting mortgage payments because my executive condominium came online, right? So the funny thing is that my executive condominium has been paid up right up till today, right? Without a steady job, right? Without a monthly income, right? So it came purely from my dividends, basically moving from one pocket from my dividends into the other pocket, right? Which is the home valuation and home equity, right? And I also slept very well at night because of this, because I managed to solve the problem for a lot of people who are trying to um, uh, reinvent themselves, right? Typically, when you're studying for an MBA or you're trying to go for an advanced degree, you have a pot of savings, right? And what happens is that as you go through your master's degree, you eat up the pot of savings and you graduate, but you graduate with a very low net worth because you've exhausted these sums. Like some of you would graduate at a negative number because you have a study loan that you need to pay back, right? For me, the scenario is the opposite, right? I started with a net worth, right? I've leveraged my account, and so it was able to support me with the dividends. Then by the time I graduated from law school, my net worth was higher than when I started, right? And that gave me the sort of confidence to know that I really know what I'm doing in my life because my net worth actually didn't go down. It actually went up a little bit. I became wealthier after I got my law degree. And so that gave me a lot of freedom to just say no, right? If the workplace is not right, just say no. Okay. All right. So what are we grappling with in autumn, right? Not too difficult to understand, right? The complaints that a lot of Singaporeans are giving, the cost of living. The cost of living is up, inflation is high, GST is 9%. There are two hot wars going on, one in Ukraine and one in the and in Israel, Gaza, and now it's expanding into Lebanon, right? So all these things is going to affect your cost of living because it's more expensive to bring stuff in, right? Another problem with autumn is that if you find yourself without a job, jobs matching is very, very hard, right? If you were to get a job, very often, if you want a more relaxed lifestyle because you don't have the same kind of energy as before, you will wind up getting much less, right? And actually, one thing I've learned, right, from the people that have been retrenched or as an employee for multinational, they often join NGOs and SMEs where it's very political and very toxic, right? Because MNCs, we are very spoiled, right? We work in a very nice kind of environment. People are smart, they are qualified. And then suddenly you find yourself in an SME where there are no proper procedures. Everything runs by a system of patronage, is who you know, a lot of brown nosing. And some people convert their office into their personal kind of fiefdom, right? So I sort of understand talking to people that in your mid-40s, job search is very hard, right? There's also ageism and jobs discrimination. You find that your experience is worth about 5% more every year. Okay, and then at the age of 45, right, it flattens. It goes flat because I suspect ageism, okay? But I also suspect that a lot of people and engineers end up driving Grab or doing some kind of platform work, right? Becoming a platform worker because they're simply not employable anymore, right? And of course, finally, we are part of the sandwich class. We have to divide our support between parents and children. And I would say this caused a lot of angst for the PAP in the last election, right? So we'll see how bad the situation is the next time around, right? So that's a problem, right? So one of the problems in autumn is you're no longer your earning peak. You're facing retrenchment in the workplace. What do you do? Okay. One of the myths that people tell you in autumn is that investing is complicated, can distract you from the realities of life. All right, I think that's not true. Okay, but the thing is that you have to understand that there are issues when you invest in something, right? Like, for example, Sabana Industrial REIT. Okay, this REIT, very nice, right? 7% dividends. dividends denominated in Singapore dollars, right? But what is the problem with Sabana, right? Why is it on the news every day, right? Problem with Sabana arose because we voted to internalize the managers, right? And the investors are sick and tired of losing money since IPO. And now there are multiple EGMs, right, for internalization moving forward. In fact, the next EGM, I think, is this weekend. It's either this weekend or next weekend, right? Okay. Now, the good thing is that if you can deal with the uncertainty and you can absorb the information about Sabana, you will have the only real estate investment trust with an internal manager moving forward, and it can be as successful as the equivalent in Hong Kong Stock Exchange with its Link REIT, right? I think it's the largest REIT, I think in Southeast Asia, I think, right? Yeah. So that's the story behind something like Sabana REIT, right? But does it have to be so complicated, right? It doesn't have to be so complicated if you understand that Sabana just gives you 7% dividends and it rewards you for being patient, right? So how to make it work, right? Simply aim to create a diversified portfolio of blue chip stocks, real estate investment trust, right? That gives you $100 a month. And right now, if you look at the stock market, STI, you can find a blue chip strategy that will give you about 5% dividend yields. You can do it, right? You can do it. Look at a newspaper. There will be investments such as the banks as well as the real estate investment trust. Overall, you get 5%, right? And at 5%, right? If you want $100 every month, you simply take 100, multiply by 12, divided by 0.05, right? If you do that, you get $24,000. And so if you can set aside $24,000 or save $2,000 every month for a year, right? You're able to result in something that gives you $100 extra every month, $100 a month, right? I call this the golden goose. It is a $24,000 goose. It pays $100 of passive income in the form of a golden egg every month and is achievable with $200 saved every month for a year. Okay, so that is what you need to do. Get your first golden goose. You get your golden goose. Everything else about investing, early retirement becomes possible. If you do not have the patience to build up one golden goose, not so easy then, right? Then you end up taking a bigger risk. Maybe one day you end up, getting into some cryptocurrency kind of investment, right? A lot of middle income Singaporeans fall into that trap, right? So this is how you let your passive income complement your earned income, right? You have your earned income, you're not quitting your job, right? But you have one goose that gives you $100 a month, okay? And all you have to do now is that once your system is set up, you begin to produce many, many geese, right? You save your income and you buy more golden goose to eventually allow compound interest to lead you to financial independence, all right? And that basically is the autumn tip, right? Sometimes all you have to do is, maybe I don't want to intellectualize this too much. I get my first golden goose first. I get a couple of blue chips, overall $100 on average every month. And then I decide whether this idea is right for me. Autumn is about taking stock and developing the resilience in your life, right? And resilience doesn't come from willpower. It doesn't come from sometimes a lot of people say that resilience is thinking simple, smelling the roses, taking walks and all that, keeping fit. Now all this is useful and all this is very important, right? But if you are able to get an alternative source of income, it drastically improves the kind of resilience that you have. And you don't need to have a full amount, right? Imagine $200 every month. Okay, on top of it, when you get retrenched, the $200 is going to be useful to you, even though it might not be able to cover all your living expenses, right? Okay, so we're done with autumn and now we're in our final season, which is the season of winter. Winter begins when you start to receive your CPF life payouts. They are the fruits of your labor and your happiness goes up again. Okay, I've not arrived in winter yet, okay, although my life is very close to someone that is in the winter stage. This is my family on holiday, right? And I have a different philosophy towards enjoyment, right? For me, I believe that enjoyment is having a kaya toast and butter coffee at Lavender, and there's nobody to control your time on the weekday afternoon. That to me is freedom, all right? And on top of it, I have a close relationship with my son because I can see him every day, bring him to school, bring him back, right? So, and I'm closer to my son than my daughter because when my daughter was schooling in kindergarten, I wasn't seeing her every day, right? So the difference is quite huge, right? Yeah, and of course, on a more serious note, when my dad was on his deathbed, in the hospital, I was able to visit him every other day and find out how he's doing. And that's a lot of freedom compared to people that hold a day job, right? Imagine asking for leave to actually see a loved one, right? And that's probably the last time you can experience with a parent, right? That's something which a lot of people in autumn go through, right? It's the loss of a parent. Okay. Now, your expenses are going to change for 55 to 65. You're going to end up spending 30% less, all right, with the focus on food and beverages, home furnishing, and health, right? So these are the three areas that you'll be spending most of your money on. And we have longevity risk in Singapore. We can live up to 85 years old, but we are often healthy up to 72 years old, right? So if you live too long, right, it becomes a possibility. And how do you make sure that you have enough money to last until, for example, 100 years old, right? And it's very important to talk a little bit about CPF Life now. Now, if suppose you listen to the government and you have the full retirement sum in your CPF Life, right? It will provide for you $1,150 every month if you take the plan that pays you the most, the standard plan, right? Now, do take note that a 65-year-old today needs $1,400 a month. After adjusting for inflation, it's about 1,500 to 1,600. So even if you listen to the government and you have the full retirement sum, there is a $500 shortfall in your retirement planning. So it means that even if you want to be conventionally retired, you need 5 golden goose running around your house per person, right? So if you have a wife, then you need 10 golden goose, right? So this is the problem of retirement inadequacy, and it affects all Singaporeans, right? So what happens at this stage will depend on how well you play your previous stages in your life, right? You reap what you sow, right? The myth in winter is that, and a lot of people in their mid 60s and all that, right? They are concerned about market crashes, and they're concerned that market crashes can destroy your life, right? And in the Great Recession of 2009, I was working in a stock exchange, having a time of my life, getting a nice 5-digit income. And what I did every month was I took the money and I farmed it into my portfolio that is crashing. So during the Great Recession, I was putting in 10,000 every month into my portfolio. The portfolio is shrinking by $30,000, all right? Because we're in the middle of the worst recession within our lifetimes. And I was also the butt of all jokes, right? At the depth of the recession, I've lost the BMW to the stock market. And my colleagues were laughing at me, right? But it's something that they didn't know. What they didn't know is that if you were to look at the recessions in Singapore, none, right? None of the recessions have lasted longer than 2 years. Okay? And you find that the longest recession was, in fact, the Asian currency crisis. That lasted 706 days, right? But central banks in Asia have learned from their lesson. And so we're not likely to see anything that will last longer than 700 within our lifetime, right? Of course, beyond our lifetime, no one can tell, right? And so if you understand this table and you act on it, it means that whenever there is a recession, you should hunker down, work, and get as much money as you can for the next 2 years and farm it into the stock market, right? Now, if you do this over time, the markets will recover. And in 2009, the markets did recover. I was the only guy invested in my stock market. And my colleagues are flabbergasted because the BMW that I lost came back as a Maserati. So this is how you handle a recession, okay? Now, during the depths of the market crash in December 2008, some of the real estate investment trusts are giving double-digit returns, right? You look at things like Ascott. Ascott's giving 18%, right? MeREIT is actually AIMS REIT, okay? And if you've invested in these REITs at that time, right, you are highly likely to emerge a millionaire when the markets finally recover in about a year or two. So that's how I made my first million. right? And markets are a lot more attractive now. You find that our REITs have not been bidded up very expensively. When interest rates began to drop, something happened in China, and a lot of these local investors began to liquidate their Singapore stocks, and they moved it into Hong Kong and China, thinking that they've unleashed the bazooka and the Chinese stocks are going to recover. So I moved about $600, right? I didn't move a lot. I was just observing, right? And what happened now, right? The Chinese markets have crashed, but the good thing is that our REITs have not really gone up yet. And so you find that there are a lot of attractive real estate investment trusts in Singapore, United Hampshire REIT being one, a REIT like Sabana, right, gives 7%. So there are very good investments in Singapore simply because people look down on us, right? We don't think that Singapore is a very attractive market, okay? And in fact, I don't think you should underestimate us because we now have a monetary authority. There is going to be a review group to revive the equities market. Of course, publicly, they will say that, it's very difficult to do this. But all you need to do is that maybe just have a new way GIC were to invest, ask them to put 3 to 5% into the Singapore stock markets. There should be an ample kind of, of bullishness that will catalyze the market into greater heights in the future, right? Now, the truth and the fact of the matter is that our government and the authorities really need to do something about our local stock market. Because without a vibrant stock market, the capital will leave Singapore and they will move into like all these American exchanges, right? And so you want to have a good private equity ecosystem where startups can raise money. You need a good stock exchange, all right? And right now, this is the time for you to put your money in simply because we're doing so badly when it comes to our IPOs that even Bursa Malaysia is doing better than us, right? And how shameful is that, right? Yeah. Okay, and of course, the REIT recovery has started, right? REIT recovery has begun. I have 36 portfolios tracking real estate investment trusts and banks. It has rebounded since the Fed chair has started to lower interest rates. So the recovery is now very strong, and there is no better place to be, right, in the stock market. Okay. So this is just a demonstration of what's happening with DBS, right? My course is the only course right now that is driven by ChatGPT, which means that if you sign up for my program, we will teach you how to do proper prompting to generate an analyst report for local stocks. This is just a fragment of what I have on technical analysis for DBS, right? And yeah, and so very cool. Okay. All right. So the tip for winter is market crashes are your ally in building great wealth. Don't be afraid of market crashes, right? In fact, markets are cheap right now. It's been dropping since interest rates have been rising. There's plenty of time to get back into the markets, right? And winter is about enjoying what you have and cherishing your time. All right. So I've come to complete the 4 seasons, and let's summarize everything that I've covered so far tonight. Right? And the first is that your X factor can come from reading popular finance books. Actually, you don't. You need to invest the time to learn finance the hard way. Second, retirement is impossible unless you listen to an advisor. Okay? And retirement is possible if you're willing to level up your investment knowledge, right? You need to gain greater knowledge so that you can exploit it, right, to make money. Investment is too complicated. It can distract you from the realities of life. Actually, not really, because all you need to do is learn a little bit of dividends investing, getting your first golden goose, and this will be your springboard towards more complicated strategies in the future. And finally, market crashes can destroy your life. That's not true. Market crashes are your ally in building great wealth, right? You can make a lot of money, right? If you were to exploit like a downturn in the stock market, right? So with a discussion of the 4 seasons, what am I really driving at, right? What I'm really driving at is that the Singapore dream is dead. That is the entire trend of actually everything I'm trying to tell you, right? And if you look at the traditional kind of advice that we've been taught, right? Go to school, get good grades, go to university, get good grades, get a steady job, work your way up, accumulate the 5 Cs, and then you retire at 65 after CPF life comes online, right? That doesn't really work these days, right? Because it's very competitive to and stressful to survive school. University degrees are very competitive if you want a professional degree like law, medicine, or computer science, right? And good grades are very hard where it's grading by the curve. And these steady jobs might not be available. Like for example, if you get a computer science degree, there might not be these $6,000 to $7,000 jobs in a hedge fund or in a startup waiting for you at least this year. All right. And so you might have to take a pay cut. Okay. Working your way up means politics. It means early retrenchment, especially if you're a tech worker. Accumulating the 5 Cs is also quite meaningless. And even if you retire at 65, you're a good soldier, you get your full retirement sum, right? It's not going to be enough for you to deal with your retirement, right? So this traditional advice, this narrative is failing, right? And the new Singapore dream, right, I believe deals with dividends, right? And this is what dividends can do for you. It can support your children's education, let them focus on a paper chase, ease minor expenses, smooth out lumpy salaries, address sudden expenses related to children's education, parents' medical expenses, cope with retrenchment. If you want to change careers, it's very useful in autumn, very, very useful in autumn, in fact. Okay, and in winter, it hedges longevity risk, pays for medical expenses, prevents yourself from becoming a burden to your children. All right, so build a dividend portfolio in summer, reap the rewards in autumn and winter. Right, so that's what dividends can do for you. And this is how dividends show up in your bank account. Beautiful surprise, it goes direct into your bank account. Even if you're lying in bed, you're in a coma, right? Your dividends will still show up in your bank account, right? Now, if you sustain your dividends for 1.5 decades like me, then you'll be able to get some pretty decent results when the economy really turns bad. Like in 2020, okay, that second half of the pandemic, right? The 2020, right? I was receiving $80,000 of dividends, right? An average of about 13,000 a month. Okay, and this comes from a portfolio that is quite big, 2.4 million, approximately 6.6% yield. All right, so this is a dividends-based kind of portfolio. Okay, the median income in Singapore at the time is about 7,744. Okay, and if you at the time where the slide was being made, if you buy a $2.4 million condo at Shenton Way, it rents for about $5,500 to $6,000. All right, so you can compare the dividend strategy compared to the real estate strategy. All right, and see how well it works for you. All right, so we've come to the end of the first stage of our workshop. All right, we're going to take a short little break. We will come back at 8:48. All right, where I will talk a little bit about the early retirement masterclass. All right, so let's take a break and I'll catch you later on. Okay, and we continue at 8:48. Okay, welcome back. All right, for the next 20 to 30 minutes or so, I'm going to talk a little bit about the early retirement masterclass, and then I will answer some of the questions that have arisen during the Q&A. All right, and the early retirement masterclass is a 5-day course, all right, to recapture the Singapore dream. And this is what we want to achieve, right? We want to transition you into an independent and successful DIY investor, all right, with ample support from a community of like-minded investors. All right, we're going to create a secondary source of income that will meet your lifestyle needs and give you the ability to use a data-driven framework to grow your portfolio, all right, in ever-changing market conditions. All right, and what is the outcome we want? We want a portfolio of local stocks, 15 to 20 in number. It contains blue chips, REITs, and business trusts, and it is designed to provide about 5 to 6% dividends spread across the year, consistent with our view of the current market cycle, right? And this is a portfolio that is very passive. You build once, you leave it for at least a year, right? In the meantime, you collect your dividends, enjoy your life, right? So this is the outcome that we're looking for. And we will provide 4 days of foundational training to teach you all the basic lingo that has been missing in the education system, right? And so at the end of the training on Saturday, you'll be taught how to apply a screen to get the stocks that we're going to be investing in. And then the class will be divided into different groups where they will debate the merits of some of the stocks that have been chosen, right? They will be taught how to look for analyst reports, right? And when the stock survives that interrogation and debate, it goes into the portfolio that I will be investing in, right? I will demonstrate how to invest it the following Monday, all right? So this is a serious course with materials like this, okay? It's intimidating, but just to give you a snippet of what we teach, right? And we use a fundamental back tester. So this is not a motivational program where we try to tell you that, like, for example, dividends investing can change your life. It can change your life, but we are fundamentally an educational institution, all right? Okay, what's special about the program is that we have a bespoke tool that I've coded that I run it off my laptop, and it allows students to perform data entry on their research, and it will consolidate all your research into one PDF that will summarize all your investment decisions. And that document is probably more valuable than whatever a professional fund manager can give to you, because every single decision is tracked and justified, right? And the only way for you to be able to get this in the training program is if the trainer can code. All right, so this is done using Python, all right, programming language. I use a framework called Django. All right, I use a framework called Django to build the web app. All right, we will go through 2 rounds of portfolio creation, 1 round for blue chips and 1 round for real estate investment trust, so that we know, at the end of the day what's going to arrive in our portfolio. All right, and here's a sample snapshot of what the final PDF looks like. This is built by my students in July 2021, right? The software would actually produce a regime chart of the portfolio that's built by the class, right? It will project an estimate of the future dividend yield. And there's all these complicated numbers that you will eventually learn what they mean, all right? And they are useful if you are a quantitative kind of investor, all right? So this is the kind of report that my system can generate. Okay, we are the only investment course in Singapore that is LLM-centric, large language models, right? We will teach prompt engineering to show you how you can use artificial intelligence to invest intelligently in local stocks, all right? So this is a summary of what happens when we ask a question on dividend sustainability. And this methodology, right, is groundbreaking because it employs research papers, right? And this is the Marquette University, all right? This is the paper that I drew inspiration from to design the course, all right? Only one in Singapore to do this, okay? I don't think anybody else knows how to do this. And I have just deployed the material I learned on prompt engineering into actually a diploma program in Singapore, teaching legal advisors how to do contract analysis. So actually, I'm doing a lot of work in this area. Every investment decision is captured and contained in the portfolio PDF. All right, so this is an example of the investment decisions that determine that we could buy Netlink Trust. All right, it is a defensive play and it generates a decent dividend over time. So Netlink Trust has been a mainstay in our portfolio for many years. All right, so we talk about that. Okay, and the PDF contains a list of stocks that can be executed in the stock market the following Monday. So for those people that want to learn how to fish, the first 4 days covers that. But for the people that want to eat the fish, then you will get the PDF at the end of the program and you can then trade based on what is listed in the portfolio the following Monday. All right, so everything is actionable by beginners. It's probably all those rare programs where you don't have to do homework on your own, and there's always some kind of way for you to invest after that. All right. With a 17% return strategy based on a back test, you do have a decent chance of early retirement even without leverage. All right, even without leverage. So it depends on the quality of the kind of work that the students do over the weekend you spend with me, and some of the portfolios do very well. All right, when the markets recover. Okay, and so you need to understand how this dividend portfolio works with your CPF Life, right? So typically your CPF Life will give you a fixed payout from 65 years old onwards. And the 70% dividend stocks will give you a variable payout that actually does adjust itself to inflation year after year, right? So if you have $1 million, $300,000 in CPF Life, $700,000 in dividends, right? You're able to get a payoff for about $4,500 every month, right? That should give you a very comfortable kind of retirement at the age of 65. So the question a lot of older students say is that, Chris, I don't have 10 years to do retirement planning, but you do have enough time to build a portfolio, given what you already have, to generate income to supplement your CPF Life. So combined together, they can give you and your spouse a workable retirement, all right, conventional retirement in such a case, right? And the relationship continues after the program. When you sign up for the course in December, I will conduct another course in March, right? So what will happen is in December, you will generate the PDF that contains the portfolio that we're building, right? In March, a new batch of students will then be enrolled and they will generate the PDF report. So you will have access to the work of every subsequent student that attends my program. So you will see the way the portfolio evolves over time, the different kind of decision making from different people, right? And so it's a very good way to learn about how to invest in Singapore and build up the kind of retail investor awareness, right? To be able to function as a Singapore kind of investor, all right? And the Facebook group, I'm there to answer questions real time. And there are people in the group that can also help you as well. And this access is lifetime. It doesn't involve any monthly subscription, and there is no upsell of advanced courses. So ERM for this December is the only one-stage kind of program that we have that you can join the community. All right. Okay. Yeah, and how do I work with the problem of conflict of interest, right? The conflict of interest means that when a group of students attend a course from an instructor, there is this risk that the instructor just gives you the knowledge and then he walks away, right? My job is done, I collect your money, right? So when I came into this industry, I wanted to do something a little bit different. I always invest my training fees into the portfolio that you build, all right? And if there's not enough money on the training fees, I will often use it to increase the leverage of my portfolio. So the risk I'm taking is large, often more than the amount that I collect in course fees. So this allows me to have some skin in the game. When you make an investment decision, I have a lot of incentive to moderate it, to get you to improve it. Okay, and I've been doing this for 36 batches. All right, so I do not need my training income to survive, right? But I do enjoy the dividends that I get from it. Okay. All right. So what are the course prerequisites? All right. First of all, if you want to succeed in investment training, you should have capital. And the capital can come in the form of SRS, CPF, or cash, right? And you need at least $10,000 for you to invest your own money, right? Otherwise, you should have a decent income. You should be employed with a $3,000 a month kind of job, all right? Yeah, this is for you to get your first golden goose within a year. Now, you should be IT literate. You need to operate a laptop and a mobile phone. You cannot be slow with IT, and there's some students I have, they are not digitally literate. they are not a good mix for the course, all right? But I've not had a student like this for a while, all right? There is some mathematics, some lower secondary school maths that you need to know to appreciate the program, okay? And it's about Sec 2 maths, all right? You don't need very advanced mathematics to do that. Sec 2 maths will do. Okay, so here's a case study. Donna's a lady on the right, by the way, and she was from batch 9. When she came to my program, she was in between jobs. So I was showing her how to actually generate income, even though you might be jobless. And she was able to get a payout from Netlink Trust within 16 days of attending the program. So it was a very fast way for her to get some rewards. And of course, now that she's back in her job, she already knows how to make money with the money that she already has. All right, so that's been very, very powerful, very, very empowering for her. All right, within a year, she was able to get the first golden goose. All right, and I think that's important because that will pay for your subscriptions, your Netflix and your Disney Plus. Okay, and so what is the value of your personal freedom, right? The question you want to ask yourself. If you're able to target $500,000 and the cost gets you to 1/5 of that, you don't even succeed, all right? Say you don't succeed in the mission, you're still $100,000 richer, all right? Let's consider the cost to be worth 20% of that, right? So it's $20,000. That's the value you get from this course. And sample strategies and every single strategy in the program is going to be documented and shared with you, right? Second, you will get a portfolio summary and a stock list of every single decision that a class makes, right? So this portfolio is bespoke, okay? And no other provider can generate these statistics, actually not even Bloomberg. And if you want to use Bloomberg to do this, 3 months of Bloomberg tutorials and usage will set you back a 5-digit sum. We have a beginner's guide to guide people towards getting a basic trading account, okay? Although it's a lot better if you already have a trading account, okay? But if you don't, right, we can handhold you, and that handholding will cost thousands of dollars. And we do that by publishing a beginner's guide that will be sent to you when you pay for the course. I have a network of partners. All of them have attended my program, so they know what the program is like. Okay, they can sign up for an extra 3-month subscription if you sign up with their Stocks Cafe. And the fundamental backtesting tool, there is a 30% discount for the people who sign up for the program. All right. And the software subscription isn't expensive like other programs. You can get everything up and running for less than, I think, $15, less than that, all right, every month. All right. So it's a very, very cheap program for you to pick up some skills in investing. And finally, the Facebook group, membership for life. You have access to me and access to future portfolios. So long as I carry on and I'm interested in being an investment trainer, you'll be able to get this benefit. Okay, and you should be able to and you should be able to sort of do this without being asked to attend an advanced course, right? And there's no membership fee, right? Okay, our program, our next run will be 17th to the 20th of December, right? And for the first 4 evenings, it'll be like this, right? I will start at 7:30 and I'll end at around 10:30, right? And we will be covering the foundations of personal finance, how the economy works, how we invest in this program. And then we'll talk a little bit about investing with fixed income, blue chips, small caps, and REITs. Then we will talk a little bit about leveraging your investments to juice up increased revenue. And finally, we will incorporate all this into government schemes. So I will teach CPF and the SRS program. This course will cover all these important systems that is a life skill, right? You need to know how this works in Singapore. All right. On day 5, we'll meet face-to-face. There'll be a final quiz with prizes. We will generate and build a portfolio that we will deploy on Monday. So it's a hands-on, lab-driven kind of exercise. All right. And then after that, we will revise everything that's been covered by the program. Okay. This is what you're going to get. I'm going to summarize it. Okay. The cost is $3,888. If you respond to a Dr. Wealth link that Dr. Wealth staff has just put up on the chat, it is a promotional program, promotional price of $2,568. All right. If you have 2 golden goose, and you use a credit card installment plan, it's free. right? It's literally free because the dividends will cover the monthly installments of $200, all right? That's how the program works. Okay, so if you are someone who is in his 40s or 50s and you have $100,000, remember that if you attend my class and you figure out how to get $5,000 to $6,000 of dividends a year, the cost breaks even within half a year, right? Within half a year, you get your money back. So this is very valuable for people who want to invest in themselves, right? Come for the first day of the program. If you're dissatisfied with what you're learning, you want your money back, all right? Dr. Well will refund you if you just attend the first day of the course, right? You don't need to attend the subsequent days. You get your money back. Okay, now if you commit within the next 72 hours, we can provide a free package that contains all the 3 books that I've authored in PDF format, a set of beginner readings from the Dr. L blog, and 2 bonus lectures on how to earn more money and how to save more money. All right, so if you act now, all right, we will be able to give you a little bit of a sweetener. All right. So summarizing the course timing, it begins on the 17th of December, it ends on the 21st of December. Right? Okay. So now I'm going to start my Q&A. I'm going to try my best to answer whatever question you have. All right. Okay, CK Lai, you're welcome. All right. Great reflection of life. Darren Guan Yu To. Okay. Oh dear. Okay. Wei Ming, hi there. This course is only suited for Singaporeans. Oh no. Actually, we do have a number of foreigners who come who come in via Zoom to attend the program. And on the final day of the lab, while they cannot be physically here, we will have a recording that can be sent to them, and they can also attend and ask questions online via Zoom. All right, so this is not limited to Singaporeans, and Dr. Well has been doing that for a while. All right, so no worries. Harshit Sheda, how volatile or stable are dividends? What's been the lowest dividend yield? All right, generally speaking, our dividend kind of companies, the average yield that we got for the last batch of students was about 7.2%. All right. The lowest yield would be around, I think about maybe 4 point something percent. It might be Thai beverage, All right. That I can actually tell you the counter that we built. Okay. We have Yang Zixiang Shipping and Thai beverage. These two are not high dividends, but they have a tendency to give you good capital gains. So we do combine these growth companies with dividend companies. So the lowest yield is not particularly impressive. I hope that answers your question. 3 to 4% sometimes. When it comes to volatility, the kind of standard deviation, right, that we have, it's about, I think, 12%. The risk that you're taking is about 60 to 80% of the rest of the markets, right? On a very bad month that occurs out of 8 years, a very bad month, the worst month, you can expect to lose about 6 to 8%, right? That's our expected shortfall. Yeah, so I need to be able to explain these properties of the portfolio that we're building. So that you don't get any idea that there are guaranteed gains. So you on a bad month, you can lose 6 to 8%. And that is very stable. That is actually very stable compared to many other portfolios built from other courses. Even your fund manager likely will take more risk than the kind of portfolios that I teach you to build. All right. So we are very slow and steady kind of program. We attract people who want to build their wealth very slowly. Okay. And generally, we attract a lot of professionals. We attract people who are already retired. There are people in their 50s who already have capital and they want to use their money and work with them. All right. So yeah, and this is not designed to be a get rich quick program. So there's no financial pornography, right? The kind of returns we're talking about is a gentle, low double-digit kind of returns, right, on average, right? Okay. Melvin Teo, one financial planner told me not to invest in Singapore stocks because of poor liquidity. What's your take? We do teach students how to deal with liquidity, and the financial planner is only partially right? Because there are 700 stocks in the local stock exchange. I dare to say that about 650 stocks are illiquid. That means when you have the bid-ask rate, right, the gap is very wide. Okay. Yeah, but the thing is that we deal with dividend stocks and we deal with blue chip stocks, and there's ample liquidity because we are dividends and value-driven kind of market. So you absolutely do not have this poor liquidity problem when you deal with banks, real estate investment trusts. And we also know how to look for small cap stocks that are liquid. All right, small cap stocks that are liquid. So I would say that I cannot say that your financial planner is wrong, but there's nothing to worry about when you invest here. All right. Harshit Sheda, what has been the average capital appreciation? What's been the max capital loss in a year? Our average capital appreciation right now, because the markets have recently recovered, has not been good. All right. And because of this high interest rates that we've had over the past 3 years, our internal rate of return so far, because we are right at the bottom of the market, is about 2 to 3%. We are making money. We are not running losses. But we are at the beginning stage of a recovery. Okay, so the capital appreciation has not been very good. Okay, now the max capital loss in a very bad year, okay, it's I think between 6 to 9%, 6 to 9%. All right, so there's been years where it's not been good. All right, and 2022 has been bad. 2023 is also bad, not as bad as 2022. I think these 2 years have been particularly bad, which is why dividend stocks are at a low, and it's a good time to actually enter, right? Yeah. So this is the kind of returns you could be looking at, right? And you just need to be patient, right? As you are getting a poorer return, you're still paid 6 to 7% every year. Okay, maybe there are some capital losses. So if you can redeploy your capital with your salary and all that, the markets will eventually recover. All right. So yeah, this is there is no better time to go in right now. Yeah, and I'll explain what an equity premium is and why the equity premium is very high in Singapore right now. And people will always say bad things about the Singapore market. That's the usual. They've been making fun of me, making fun of Singapore investing for a very long time. But I think the joke's on them, right? The joke's on them, right? Yeah. So so my portfolio, as you know, it's a 7-digit sum that's fairly substantial, and I'm living on a 5-digit amount every year. So I guess it's fine. Getting made fun of is fine. Okay. All right. We've come to the end of our Q&A. If you have any questions that you want to ask, you can write to Dr. Wealth, and I will answer the question to the best of my ability. And I hope to see you in class. Before I end, all right, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the final slides, right? The final question that I want to leave with you is the question of where are the customers yours, right? When you know that the trainer is relatively successful, but that's actually not as important compared to the question of whether do we have successful students. So I do have successful students, right? I have a couple of high-powered finance executives in their mid-30s. The husband attended my class on December 2019, and they are banking couples, so they have a strong foundation in finance, right? But the problem with strong foundation is that you might understand the theory, you might not really understand the practical. So what they did was they farmed $30,000 into every portfolio that I built from December 2019 to present day, and they've applied 2 times leverage, all right? And they survived through the pandemic, okay? And when I looked at their portfolio in 2021, they've been averaging a return of 17% a year. And in less than 2 years, the portfolio size was $1 million, right? And get this, right? You might think that they've made a loss recently. Actually, they didn't, because on Facebook, when interest rates began to fall, I told them to remove all their leverage positions. So because they are part of the network, I don't think their losses are particularly big, but now I think they are ready to leverage again. All right. So very successful couple, the best that I have. But you need to understand, right? Most of their salary come from working for financial institutions and leveraging on their financial knowledge on top of whatever they learn in my program, right? Which is why my program attracts a large bulk of PMEX, right? Professionals, managers, executives, and technicians. So I hope that you'll be happy to reinvent yourself for 2025. Give yourself a chance to pick up some skills in early retirement. Let it change your destiny. I hope this is your new Singapore dream. I hope to see you in class. Good night. Have a great evening. Thank you very much.